Welcome back to another MOTOBOB video, and this week MV Agusta finally announced the full details of their incredible looking hyperbike, the Superveloce 1000. Now it's been over a year since they first showed the prototype of this bike, but even now the visual impact of this final production version is just something else, and I think it's going to be one of the most spectacular motorcycles you'll basically never be able to ride. So in this video we're going to go through all of the details with absolutely everything that you need to know about it. Now this bike is basically built upon the same platform as their Brutale 1000 bikes, which means it will use a similar 998cc inline 4, and while they do say it will get its own specific tune, the performance figures really do look on paper very similar. That is by no means a bad thing, because the numbers are absolutely wild. So it's 208 horsepower at 13,000 RPM and 116.5 Newton meters of peak torque at 11,000 RPM. Now there is all sorts of interesting stuff going on inside this engine, like the titanium conrods, DLC coated cams and the counter-rotating crankshaft, but having ridden both the Brutale 1000 RR and the RS version, both of which pretty much use the same engine, I can tell you two key things about what it's like to ride. Number one is that, of course, it's ridiculously fast, and despite not having a great deal in the way of mid-range, if you wind it up and get the bike singing, it'll scare the absolute life out of you. But secondly, and one of my favourite things about those bikes is the soundtrack. It's got a real bark to it at the exhaust, and I think it's just a little more aggressive than a lot of the other inline 4s that I've had the pleasure of riding. This particular Superveloce 1000 model gets a quad-exit titanium exhaust system and is developed in partnership with the experts at Akropovich, so I'd expect it to sound every bit as good as the Brutale 1000s, if not a little better. Now this bike rolls on a similar chassis as well to the Brutale 1000, so it's a steel trellis frame mated to aluminium side plates for the swing arm pivots, and there's an aluminium single-sided swing arm out back, which has allowed them to make the most of one of the most striking details on this bike in my opinion, and that's the wheels, which are said to be inspired by the F4 Serie Oro that came many years before. Combined with the carbon brake disc covers at the front, the wheels just elevate this bike to a level of design and detail that for me is way above most of the bikes on the market, even at a very high price point. And you've got to say it's a prime example of MV doing what MV do best. Now these rims are shod with some super sticky rubber. These are the Pirelli Diablo Supercorsa SP V4s. And actually you won't find these very specific tyres on any other bike, because the red details on the tyre walls that sort of tie in with the rest of the bike are custom made for MV for the Superveloce 1000. Elsewhere, we've got top draw suspension from Öhlins with their electronically adjustable semi-active fork and shock. So you've got a 43mm upside down fork with a titanium nitride coating to reduce friction, and then a 36mm shock at the rear, and you've got 120mm of travel at each end. You've also got an Öhlins electronically adjustable steering damper, and then as you'd expect, braking is absolutely top notch as well, with a pair of Brembo's high-spec Stylema calipers on 320mm discs, and those are operated by a Brembo radial master cylinder at the lever. Now we'll get onto the price in a bit, and it really truly is quite eye-watering. And so look, while you would expect the absolute best for that sort of money, I think it feels like that's exactly what MV have delivered with the equipment on this bike. It is as well a similar story on the tech front. You've got an absolutely comprehensive suite of rider aids managed through 4 riding modes of rain, sport, race and custom, and within that you've got 8 levels of traction control, so 2 for rain, 3 for road and 3 for the track. There's varying levels of ABS, there's rear wheel lift control to stop the rear wheel coming up under heavy braking, and also you've got a wheelie control package that helps to maintain a wheelie rather than just shutting it down and slamming the front wheel down. Then on top of that you've got a whole bunch of other techie features, including an up and down quick shifter, their latest generation, launch control, which I've had the chance to try out on the Brutale 1000, and it was absolutely ridiculous. No! Cruise control, of course, for those tours and easygoing motorway rides, and it's managed through their TFT display, which has got a very nice visual design to some of the graphics, and it's typical MV. Then it's got GPS built in, and it sends some of your ride data to the app so you can record all your rides and share them with your friends if you're into that sort of thing. And there's a satellite alarm built in, and you get a free year of using that bundled into the cost, although you probably expect it. The only thing I don't really love on these MV Agustas is the switch gear. It doesn't feel quite as premium as the rest of the bike, and I'm sure I've seen those switch gears on other bikes, so it's maybe something they just buy in. But otherwise, it's got to be said, the tech package has absolutely everything you'll need and more. But look, a massive part of the appeal of this bike, arguably the biggest part, is gonna be the looks, with a highly original take on the sports bike format that draws some retro inspiration from the MV Agusta bikes of yesteryear. Naturally, bearing the Superveloce name, there's more than a little bit in common with the original Superveloce 800, with the small round lighting at the front and rear, the classic MV paint job, and some of the details like the leather tank strap. But look, this 1000 version of the Superveloce is of course a different beast when it comes to performance, and it really does feel like they've taken the styling up another notch too. It just looks more aggressive, more dramatic, there's more presence to it as well. And for me, quite simply, I think this might be one of the best looking motorcycles that's ever been made. That is a highly subjective matter though, so do let me know what you think of it down in the comments below. One touch that I think helps it look a little more substantial, at least from the front end, versus the Superveloce 800 has to be the winglets. And while they do claim an extra bit of stability owing to the sort of marginal positive effect on the aerodynamics that winglets can have, they do also admit that they're at least partially there as a styling exercise, and also that they tie this bike back to some of the MV Grand Prix bikes of the 1970s, which were amongst the first to adapt these aero appendages. As for the materials used across the rest of the bike, well, there's absolutely loads of carbon fiber. It's the best of the best, so there are 41 individual components, they say, made from carbon with a variety of techniques, some forged, some laminated, and these include the dash support, the chain guard, the fairing, and also some of the other parts that are in the additional dedicated kit. And then to finish it all off, you've got an Alcantara seat, the leather tank strap I mentioned earlier, titanium fasteners, and logos sort of etched here and there that I think all help to add up to something that really does look very special indeed. Now, MV have said that there are just 500 of these bikes to be made, and that many of them are already allocated, with pre-orders for the Superveloce 1000 Serie Oro being reserved exclusively to brand collectors. The few remaining units of the Total 500 will be available through MV Agusta's official dealer network, and the lucky buyers who will be able to secure one will automatically be granted access to the same privileges and experiences reserved for MV collectors. So look, cough up and you're in the club, and the price, well, even if you can get there quick enough to get hold of one, it's £61,400. On the face of it, that is a heck of a lot of money, and it puts this bike out of question for pretty much 99.9% of bikers. But then again, just purely as a spectator, I'd observe that this is about in line with what Ducati have been charging, for example, recently on some of their special editions like the Bentley Diavol V4 or the Supreme edition of the Street Fighter V4 or even the Lamborghini edition. But look, beauty is in the eye of the beholder and all that. But for me, those Ducati specials, you're pretty much just paying for a paint job and maybe some fancy wheels on top of an existing model. This though, well, it is something really substantially different to the Brutale 1000 that it's based upon. And you can see all the work and attention to detail that's gone into it. So if I absolutely hypothetically had £60,000 burning a hole in my pocket, well, I think this is absolutely where it would go. Let me know though, in an absolute dream world, which bike you'd pick. And also, if you'd like to see how MV Agusta make their bikes, then there's a factory tour that I shot a couple of years back now, and it really is a fantastic place. If you haven't seen it already, I'd thoroughly recommend giving it a click and giving it a watch. Also, hit subscribe if you want to see more of the latest motorcycle news like this right here on YouTube. A massive thanks for watching today, and we'll see you in the next video.